Hello everybody and welcome back. I hope you had some nice refreshments and you are ready for the final part of the day. This is where we all come back together in this plenary room, and we're going to have a couple of keynote speeches and some closing remarks and also some key takeaways from the breakout sessions which happened earlier. So I want to take this opportunity as well to thank our sponsors, our venue sponsor Sporkes, our gold sponsors Blue Orchard, part of Schroders Group, and also our silver sponsors CMS Luxembourg, Deloitte, and Opportunity Financial Services. Please continue to use the hashtag IFF 2024 and tag us at ICFA and at ISFA if you are using social media today. And if you're joining us online, thank you so much for being here, and you can leave any comments and tell us where you are joining us from in the chat function. So we are going to have our first keynote speaker of this section now. We're going to be joined by Torsten Becker from FS Impact Finance, and this is about the relevance of microfinance for biodiversity conservation. This session explains what biodiversity is, why it's important, how wrong and exploitative farming practices contribute to its degeneration, and to what extent smallholders and rural communities in low-income countries are concerned, and much, much more. So please welcome to the stage Torsten Becker.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Torsten. I'm with FS Impact Finance. We are an investment firm and a portfolio manager operating out of Frankfurt, Germany. We are active in microfinance, climate finance, renewables, restoration, a couple of other things. And we're also a member of the Just Institute, through which we want to promote financial inclusion for biodiversity protection, for climate adaptation, climate resilience of smallholders. And that's also more or less the topic of my little speech here today, so thanks a lot for having me. Some of you might know this graphic here, which became quite famous some 2-3 years ago when the world was slowly beginning to recover from COVID-19, and when it became obvious that we're facing a pretty severe economic downturn. And back then, some climate activists, climate scientists used the opportunity to remind us all that actually, even if we make it through recession, even if we find a way to deal with COVID, there's still an even bigger threat ahead of us, like in this picture, an even bigger wave coming towards us, and that is climate change. And then some other people appeared on the scene, other activists, scientists, and also this artist here, saying that, no, hold on, wait a minute, that's still not the entire bigger picture, right? Because even if we find a way to mitigate and to adapt to climate change, there's even a bigger wave, bigger threat coming towards us, and that is biodiversity loss. And it was about that time when a smart woman told me that our response to climate change will determine how we will live in the future, whereas our efforts in protecting and restoring biodiversity will determine if we will live in the future, not how, but if. And that made me think actually for quite a while, and made me kind of enlarge or widen my scope from climate finance only to climate and biodiversity. But what is biodiversity actually, and why is it so important? Well, the answer to this question at least is fairly simple. And we just learned it as well in the group discussion, the breakout session we just had. Thanks a lot, it was very interesting. Well, biodiversity is the basic for intact ecosystems, and those ecosystems provide their services to us, as we call it, as we see it as humans, right? They provide their services to us, and those those ecosystem services enable us as a human species to live and to survive on this planet in the first place. That's clean air, fresh water, fertile soil, pollination. Couple of others you can hopefully see here, read here in the slide. And I think that's actually good enough or worthwhile enough to protect and restore ecosystem services and biodiversity. But we are finance people, right? We are investors, bankers, economists. So we always want to put a price tag on everything in order to decide whether or not it's actually important to protect something, to restore something. And those numbers are also very, convincing, very massive, actually. So in 2011, when this estimation was being made for the first time, researchers found that the total value of ecosystem services to us humans in that year was 140 trillion US dollars. So trillion, that's the number with the 9 zeros. And in the same year, the global GDP was actually only 70 trillion US dollars. So ecosystem services twice as much as the global GDP. And another rule of thumb says that half of the global GDP couldn't even have been generated in the first place if it hadn't been for intact ecosystems. So 35 trillion US dollars economic value just gone if it wasn't for functioning ecosystems. So there's also significant economic value to protecting and restoring nature and biodiversity. And still, we keep on destroying nature and the environment and biodiversity and ecosystem services as if there was no tomorrow. Probably you know those examples here on that slide. So especially since the 1970s, we've been managing to destroy almost 70% of the world's biodiversity. Currently, there's another 1 million species facing extinction. Many of the world's ecosystems are actually under acute risk of collapsing. And 6 out of 9 planetary boundaries have been exceeded already. And as we just learned a couple of weeks ago at the New York Climate Week, the researchers of the Potsdam Institute actually presented their latest planetary health check, mentioning that the 7th boundary, the ocean acidification, is very soon to be crossed as well. So just quickly on the planetary boundaries, I hope you can see it. So already in 2009, researchers found that the first 2 boundaries were being exceeded, and the one being here on the top left, this one here, that's biosphere integrity, and that basically refers to biodiversity loss, and that to a large extent is driven by harmful agricultural practices, application of pesticides, for example. The second one you see under 2009 at the bottom, that is the so-called biogeochemical flows of nitrogen and phosphorus. And I'm not a chemist, but that basically, those flows have been radically changed by us humans, mainly by the production and application of synthetic fertilizers. So pesticides, fertilizers. In the end, it's harmful agricultural practices that were the main drivers, or have still been the main drivers for exceeding those first 2 planetary boundaries. Now, there's many ignorant people here on this planet. I'm sure you also know 1 or 2 of them who might say, like, why would I care, right? Like, what do I have to do with all this? I have enough to eat. I have enough food, clean air, fresh water, and all of that. Now, the problem is, what even the most ignorant people on the planet have to understand is that many of those ecosystem services simply cannot be replaced by us humans. Fertile soil is probably the best example here. So there's no scientist, no research lab in the world that can reproduce fertile soil. Soil is a very complex system, and once it's been degraded, either structurally or biologically or chemically, it takes the soil itself like thousands of years for it to recover and to regain its fertility. And I think given the number of people we will soon have to feed here on this planet, 10 billion in some 20, 30 years, probably we cannot wait 1,000 years for soils to recover. And the very bad news is that 1/3 of the world's soils is already degraded. Just also to show the close link or interaction between biodiversity loss and climate change. Soils, as you probably know, are also one of the world's biggest carbon sinks, and when the soil degrades, obviously it releases the carbon, CO2 gets emitted into the atmosphere, and given the huge amount of land, huge amount of soils we talk about here, that's an additional billions of tons of CO2 actually that get emitted only from degraded soils. Soil is only one part of the equation, though, as we just also we're discussing in the breakout session. Pollination is obviously also another very important ecosystem service that cannot be or can only very hardly be replaced by humans. And still, yeah, we also keep on killing pollinators as if there was no tomorrow. And so you see, overall, my point is actually agriculture, or agricultural or harmful agricultural activities are the biggest driver of biodiversity loss. And that includes smallholders as well. So it's not only the big corporates, the big agricultural industries in the EU and the US that are to be blamed. Unfortunately, smallholders in low and middle income countries, they are the first ones to suffer from those developments, right? The first ones to suffer from biodiversity loss, climate change, decreasing productivity, decreasing agricultural yields. But they also apply harmful farming practices, talking generally here, of course, by applying pesticides, by using synthetic fertilizers, and so on and so forth. So why am I telling you all this? Well, smallholders, at least those who have access to finance, they get their money from microfinance institutions. And microfinance institutions get their money from impact investors. So if I wanted to be provocative, I could say now that microfinance institutions, the microfinance sector, impact investors, we are all part of the problem by either knowingly or unknowingly financing harmful farming activities. But I didn't come here to be provocative, so let me put it a bit differently, please. Instead, I would like to say that microfinance institutions, the microfinance sector, and impact investors can be, and especially have to be actually, part of the solution. Microfinance institutions will need to play a key role in transforming the agricultural sector in low and middle income countries, starting with transforming themselves. And what does this mean? That means that, or what does it mean for us actually? What does it mean for impact investors, as we heard so many times today, sitting here in Luxembourg? What can we do actually here out of Europe? Well, I think impact investors need to support microfinance institutions, and especially those with large agricultural portfolios, to understand and manage biodiversity risks, to implement or to install biodiversity-related do-no-harm principles, to measure the right set of KPIs. We had this discussion as well in the afternoon. Measure the right set of KPIs to understand what they actually have in their portfolio, how to track that, what does that mean, also quantitatively. We should support microfinance institutions in understanding the bigger goals and targets of the UN Global Biodiversity Framework, of the TNFD recommendations that are issued in this regard, other regulatory requirements that investors like us will impose on them one day, sooner than later. But beyond disclosure and risk management and reporting and all of that, I think most importantly, we should support microfinance institutions, again, especially those with large agricultural portfolios, to actually develop strategies and develop financial products, loan products that help their clients, that help the smallholders to actually protect and restore nature and biodiversity. And that's what we're currently working on. So together with our friends and partners of the Just Institute and the BNP Paribas, we are in the process of setting up an investment fund that's not only obviously supposed to provide the required capital, but that's also supposed to, we had the keyword very often today, technical assistance. That's also supposed to support microfinance institutions in managing this strategic transition successfully. And it's not too late to join the party, so if you're interested in this fund, please come see me. But with that, thank you very much, and I'm very happy for any comments or questions. Thank you.